Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you to offer some positive words of encouragement for you and me, for all of those that are going through some tough times right now. What I want to offer to you is a better way to cope. On the show last week, I talked about grieving and I talked about how grief needs a witness. We are going on the aftermath of these horrible, what I believe intentionally created fires in Hawaii because the evildoers are seeking to use those kinds of catastrophes for their own good. And regardless of what you are going through, if you've seen that news, it's likely that it has affected you in some way. I know that here we have subscribers that live in Hawaii, that have spent time in Hawaii. As a Californian, I have spent many vacations there, and it is very, very devastating to see another piece of paradise be destroyed, just like we had Paradise, California. So without getting into too many of the political aspects of this quite alarming catastrophe, I do want to talk about ways that you can consider to cope with your heartache and your sorrows in a way that really works. So I would recommend that you review last week's video about grief needs a witness. And then for today, I want to talk about something that might seem out of place when we're talking about grieving. And in fact, I'll just get to the punchline right now, and then I will backtrack a little bit and fill in the gaps in terms of why I believe this is so helpful. So in times of my life when I have had some traumatic losses and some uh, sequential losses, meaning one and then another, where they just kind of pile one on top of another, that can be very, very overwhelming. Many of you have told me that you have had those sequential losses as well. Sometimes you're not even able to grieve the first one, and then you're hit by another one. So in my finding a witness for my grief and having somebody that could listen to my sorrows without trying to fix them or telling me to keep my chin up and it will all get better, because as we know, that doesn't really help us much either. Let me just make sure that the comments are enabled here as I'm streaming. Okay, great. Thank you for being on board, everyone. So I want to tell you about the advice that I got, and then I want to talk about things that, in my opinion, make the grief and the sorrow and the pain even worse. So right from the get-go, everybody grieves differently, and what might work for me might not work for you. I understand that, but I know that you're tuning in because you want some of my advice and input and perspectives. So that's what I'm about to give you. So this person that was helping me with my grieving said, Peggy, you need more sunsets, more puppy dogs, and more funny movies. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I am going through some life-changing experiences here that are leaving me unmoored and feeling completely like I've lost my life. I've lost important parts of myself. How can you tell me to watch a funny movie? That seems so insensitive. How can you tell me to go watch a sunset? What do you mean I need more puppy dogs? That one I agreed with, right? We all need more puppy dogs. And what she meant was this: when you are grieving and injured and deeply in anguish, more than others, you need to take a break, even more than the others. You need to take time and watch a sunset. And if you don't have an area where you can watch a sunset, you can watch one online. These were metaphors for doing something that is going to lighten the load and make you feel better. So it might be listening to music. It might be getting a massage. It might be going out for a meal instead of preparing your own. It might be taking a bath and closing the door and just spending, time when you're not with other people, or it might mean spending time with other people, getting out of your own individual pain and sorrow. The point that she was making that I think is so important is to find a way to give yourself a break in the very midst of your pain and anguish and sorrow. So she was using an example such as watching a sunset, such as watching a funny movie. you may be saying, Peggy, this is not the time for laughter and humor. And that this is something that I may want you to consider, is taking a break from the river of pain so that you'll have the strength and the ability to grieve again. And then the idea of the puppy dogs is to have something that brings you joy. It may mean cuddling a baby, spending time with people where they are a little bit more lighthearted and uplifted. And this can give you a break from your grieving. Because if you are grieving nonstop without any breaks, it could lead to your own physical, literally physical ills. A lot of people have, and let me know if this is true for you, a lot of people have physical setbacks after they've been grieving. I remember some years ago when my sister's husband passed away, and it had been after a long time of, he had some problems because he had a stroke. And so it had been many years of kind of a pre-grieving. And then when he passed away, it was so devastating to all of us. And then there were other complicating factors as well. There was a job that shut down for me and a couple of other things. And I remember saying, I really need a break. This is, my life is overwhelming on so many levels. And guess what? I got a break, an actual break. I broke my foot and I ended up in bed for the first 48 hours. And then luckily I didn't have to have surgery or anything, but I was in one of those boots and I was on a scooter, and everything in my life at that time had to be adjusted. So, you know, I lived kind of in a loft setting where I had to go up and down the stairs all the time. And I would have to do it on my rear end because I couldn't walk up and down the stairs. I had one of those little scooters that I had to put in and out of my car. I was teaching some exercise classes at the time. Imagine that, teaching exercise classes with a broken foot. So I had so many things that had to change in my life, but it actually helped me slow down in a certain way. I'm using that as an example to illustrate that often people will have accidents or other episodes when they're grieving because they simply are not paying attention. I remember after my dad died, driving to the university and my husband calling me saying, sweetheart, you left your wallet on the floor of the carport, you know, out in public. And I'm like, what? How did I leave my wallet on the floor of the carport out in public? Because I wasn't paying attention. And that's because I didn't give myself any time to take a break from the grieving. So finding another way to cope that could include a little bit of levity, a little bit of beauty, a little bit of pampering. This is not denying what happened. This is not denigrating or demeaning or minimizing the level of your loss. In fact, it actually helps you grieve that loss, in my opinion, without having these a negative impact on yourself. At the end of the video, I'm going to share with you a couple of YouTubers that I like to watch that has helped me take a break from all of the heavy coverage and reporting that I've been doing over the last going on 4 years. So I've had to take a break in order to keep myself strong and renewed and refreshed, in order to continue to do the deep dives, to do the digging, to do the research, the investigative reporting, to kind of take one for the team and watch some of these news reports that I really don't like to watch the news. By the way, strangely enough, in the reporting that I've been doing and the research that I've been doing, CBS, out of all of the mainstream media merry-go-round people, seem to be doing the best coverage on some of these catastrophes that have been happening. But I do like to take a break from that. Before I show you those YouTube channels that I really like, let me know in a comment below if there is a YouTube channel that you like to watch that brings you a little bit of levity, lightheartedness, that brings you some joy and is a break from all the heaviness. Please let me know in a comment below. And I encourage everyone to watch my video from last week, because I give you some specific tips about grieving and about getting support so that you're not grieving alone. Today's is a little bit different. I want to talk about how to cope in ways that really work. Let me tell you what doesn't work. All right, in my view. And I have noticed this pattern for many, many years of my life. And it started when I was doing animal rescue. And I've been involved in animal rescue and animal shelter work and all of that from, oh my gosh, the age of 18 or 20, something like that, because I used to volunteer at the animal shelter doing educational tours for the public. Back in the day when the shelters were not so overrun here in Southern California, it's really gone downhill, sadly. And when I was in graduate school doing my master's degree in international law and policy, I was living up in the beautiful Monterey Peninsula, and they had an excellent animal shelter there that was on a few acres, at least it seemed like that to me at the time. And they had not only dogs and cats, but they had bunnies and they had horses and turtles and all manner of animals. And they would bring children from the local schools, and I would give them a tour and I would teach them about animal care. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I love it. The harder work is actually out there rescuing the animals from the street, nursing them back to health, taking them to the vet, finding homes for them, doing the fundraising, networking. I've been involved in all of that for decades. I went to Hurricane Katrina, and this is where the story connects to the grief. While I was doing animal rescue in Hurricane Katrina, and I met people from all walks of life, from all different states, it was really like a cultural exchange. And here I was, somebody from the West Coast, flying out to New Orleans. They had closed the city. I had to sleep in my car for several days, living on like protein bars that people had donated. They actually had a FEMA camp set up. I have a video on my other channel called I Stayed in a FEMA Camp, all the crazy things that happened to be there. So I ended up staying in my car instead. But the lack of sleep, the lack of nutrition, the high level of anxiety and adrenaline and cortisol, and the urgency of getting these animals out that had been locked in their homes. I was able to go because I had credentials from the Humane Society, and it literally was a lockdown city with the National Guard, with the Marines, and you had to have your badges in order to go in and out to try to rescue these animals from the homes. So what happened is I met people that actually were like animal control officers from Connecticut and Pennsylvania and Ohio. And there were people that were working for animal shelters from every state that had literally gotten in their car. They saw the disaster on the news. They drove to New Orleans and they said, what are they doing leaving these animals in the homes? I'm going to go in and rescue them. Now think about this, was 18, going on 19, actually exactly 18 years ago this month, because the hurricane broke out on my birthday, which was August 31st. Yes, it broke out. I didn't know back then what I know now about the intentional destruction that can be created and magnified and augmented and steered and directed and all of that. That's all on my other channel. But what I wanted to say was that at that time, I met people who had this strange habit. Let me know if you've seen that, and maybe even online now with everything we've gone through. They had the weirdest habit of telling me horror stories, and they were all trying to like out horrify each other with the most unspeakable kinds of tragedies related to animals. And I'm looking at him going, why are you even telling me this? All you're doing is adding trauma to the already trauma that I'm experiencing. All right. That doesn't help me at all. We are faced with getting these animals out of these homes right now. I don't want to talk about other animal incidents that you've been on, or things that you've seen, or cases that you did or whatever. Don't tell me. So I would be like, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear it. I'm the same way. That's why I don't watch movies. I don't want to be traumatized by murder movies. I don't want to see people being raped and murdered and shot. Why in the non-spinning world? If you haven't heard that expression, I don't have any evidence that the world is spinning. If you can provide that for me, my observable reality shows me that I am on a non-spinning plane. Anyhow, I'd like to say that to also get people's curiosity going to question what we've been told. But why in the world would I expose myself to these types of traumatic images when I personally can do nothing about it? Well, Peggy, it's so that you're informed. I'm already informed. I don't need to see the traumatic images or hear the horrific stories in order to be informed that there is evil in the world. It damages and worse, conditions you to be less sensitive to the real horrors that are out there. Now, here's where that example fits into what I'm talking about, because I'm talking about coping and finding ways to work. I realized that this tendency of people to one-up each other with more horrific images, with more horrible ideas and visions and concepts and reporting, here's what I think is going on. Because I don't do it. And I've guarded against doing it. And I've taught for 3 going on 4 years for you to guard your heart, to take every thought captive, to push out those thoughts that are horrifying, and you replace them with something better. Because with all those horrific things I was told and all the unspeakable horrors that I saw personally in New Orleans, like a war zone, literally, I could still turn my attention to something good. And I could say, you know what, in the midst of all this loss, look at all these amazing people that came here to try to help. That's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on the animals that to this day, I have Elsie is still here with me, 18 years old, that I brought back from Hurricane Katrina, along with Itty Bitty, who passed away last year, along with Dixie, who still is living with my best friends. I encouraged them to adopt her, and all of the other animals, hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands, I don't know, of animals that were saved. Their lives were spared because of these selfless people that put their own lives on the line, left their jobs, their livelihood, their family to drive to New Orleans to rescue these animals. That's what I focused on. Why would I focus on the horror and the loss and the unbelievable heinous things why would I do that? It doesn't serve me or my ability to actually grieve what I saw. It makes it worse. Worst is worse than worse. So here's what I noticed. I noticed it all throughout the hogwash, that people would talk about all the horrible things that they were seeing and hearing and reporting. Why are you doing that? Here's why. Because some of you, and my heart goes out to you, have experienced somewhere along the line in your life, maybe very early, and it created a type of perspective for you to see the world. And you saw the world as scary and dangerous, and you saw people that were harmful and hurtful and you couldn't trust, that betrayed you, that harmed you. Maybe even later through your life, as an adult, you were betrayed by a boss or somebody that you loved, or they thought they loved you, they lied to you, they cheated. Maybe you saw something, maybe you experienced a loss. Stick with me, because I'm going to get to the main point. And the main point is this: when you see something that is even worse than what you went through, there's something in your being that is trying to find a soothing state. You are trying to make yourself feel better. So when you see someone else that is suffering more than you, and I think this is unconscious, I don't think it's like a conscious thing that you're seeking. And when you hear about an event or you see images, you're like, well, at least that didn't happen to me. Oh my gosh, it's horrible what happened in Maui, but at least my children were safe at home. And at least my house didn't burn down. And then you start, maybe not you, but they start building and adding to the narrative and making it even worse. And I'm like, there's not even any evidence for this. I do not care for this type of alarmist reporting when there's no evidence for it. An example about, oh, the children were left home alone. What evidence do you have for that? Well, the schools were closed. Why does that mean they were home alone? Well, because their parents were at work. How do you know that? How do you know one parent doesn't work? How do you know there's not, if you know anything about the Hawaiian culture, many, many families are multi-generational. You've got the auntie living there. You've got the grandma living there. You've got neighbors next door. Are you telling me that the population of Lahaina has a habit of leaving their elementary school children home alone by themselves when there's no school? It doesn't make sense. You don't think that they would have taken their child with them to work that day, or that they would have given them to the auntie next door? They would have called a babysitter, or the dad would have come home. If you're at all familiar with the culture there, many of these in the population, they are, they're construction workers, they're electricians and plumbers. Some of them are creating handcrafted items at home. They're not going to a 9-to-5 job in some high rise in Lahaina. So I reject wholeheartedly this idea of adding an additional level of trauma to an already traumatic situation. There's no evidence that a number of children perished. It doesn't add up. And then the idea of, well, they were sent home from school. Oh, so they would have been safer at school? The school's burned. Why would have they been safer there? There's two things I want to make a point about. Number one, would you ask the same questions that I'm asking? Please do not accept anything that is presented to you without asking questions. Which schools closed and why and at what time? Here's another thing that doesn't add up. Let's say that the schools were closed and the children were sent home. And let's say they were home alone on their own, an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old or something. The fire didn't break out until the afternoon. So that doesn't add up either. At 9 o'clock in the morning, there were some little fires that were put out. And then the more destructive fires didn't start until about 3:30 or a little bit later. And the most devastation was at night. Are you telling me that the parents still weren't home? So I am using this as an example to not allow these things to grab your attention and for you to use them in an attempt to cope better. It doesn't work. It actually fuels, and I'm using that word on purpose, your own anxiety, your own dread, and your own fears. Leave it alone. Set it aside. You can, one of my lovely subscribers said, you can observe without absorbing. So you're observing without absorbing. You have compassion with boundaries. That's how you do it. Stop looking for more and more horrible things in an attempt to make your own situation look better in comparison. Years ago, I did a show called America Now. This was over 10 years ago. And I was the health and wellness expert on this daily Lifetime magazine show. All right. There was a guy that taught you how to train your dog. There was somebody that talked about money. Somebody else was a Mr. Fix-It. And I was the one that talked about health and wellness. And I wanted to present the information such as make sure that you, take a look at your shampoo bottles and make sure you don't have any of these toxic chemicals in your shampoo. That's how I wanted to say it. And the producer said, oh, no, Peggy, that's not scary enough. You have to come out and say, your bathroom is trying to kill you. Like, I don't even go for that kind of hype. And the producers would produce my segments so that they started out with fear, because fear is what draws people's attention. It fuels their adrenaline. They get a hit of nervousness and excitement. And, that hit of adrenaline, of cortisol, that makes you kind of feel alert and a part of things. So that has been and this wasn't even like a hard hitting news show. This was like a magazine afternoon kind of, that's what they were called. It was called a magazine show. And even then they wanted this information to be scary so that they could grab people's attention. So I'm here to tell you that does not help. Later, we were replaced by what do they call them? A reality show. And I'm like, I can't believe we were replaced by a reality show. How could that be? We were not, I don't even watch TV, but it was like we were nominated for Emmys and all of that. And I did it because I wanted to share my health and wellness tips from a natural perspective with people. And it was funny because I never even really watched the segments because I didn't have a TV. And they said, yeah, the reality shows are much more popular. And I said, how could these reality shows be more popular? They're so obviously scripted and fake, phony, and false. And the producer said, because it helps people feel better about their own lives. I never forgot that. And when you're watching these ridiculously scripted events with these characters, and it's called reality, maybe not you, but the masses are looking at their life going, well, at least I don't have a neighbor like that, or at least I'm not doing that. And this didn't happen to me. So when you are looking at these horrendous images and narratives that are pushed, and you're not even challenging them, and not only are you not challenging them, you're forwarding them. You're sending this to other people and you haven't even vetted it. That really bothers me. Why are you adding, and I'm not you, but the masses, why are you adding fuel to the fire? And I'll tell you why. In an unconscious, unknowing way, you're trying to make yourself feel better by comparison. Well, at least I didn't lose my home. At least my kids weren't left home alone. At least I still have a job, even in your grief. So here's the coping that really works. Stop with the sensationalized hogwash. Turn it off. Take a break. Stop it. You don't need to watch all those movies. You don't need to expose yourself to this stuff. Half of it I don't even believe. You will never hear me on this channel or any other channel telling you to watch those movies that are blockbuster hits. You will never hear me doing it. I don't want to be exposed to it. You don't need to be exposed to it. There's nothing personally you can do to change that by watching those images. It only damages you. And I believe that it is intentional. I absolutely do. I can't hold back here, friends. Mainly, I just don't talk about that. And through my silence, you'll know what I highlight and what I don't highlight. Let me show you what I do highlight. These are some lovely YouTube channels that I get a kick out of. Now, the guy does have a little bit of, should I say, spicy language from time to time. But again, I just look at the humor and I leave aside anything. I'm not easily offended by that kind of stuff. And I love dogs. And I was telling you about having more puppies. So let me cue this up for you. I'm going to share my screen. And thank you, everybody. I know this is a little bit of a hard hitting, but a better way to cope is to expose yourself to more lighthearted things. And you'll say, Peggy, I have to stay informed. Informed is different than obsessed. You have a beautiful vessel that God created. He does not want you to damage it with junk images, junk food, and everything else. All right, let me share my screen. Here we go. Enough of that. I think this is hilarious. And these are shorts, so you can watch them really quickly, one after the other. So the channel is Johnny Devaney. He's from Canada. He has a little bit of an accent. And he has all sorts of funny, short little videos about dogs and the different kinds of dogs and their personalities. And again, it's a little bit irreverent. All right. I'm a person of faith, but I'm not getting offended. It's humor. It's humorous. Once in a while, there's a little bit of very mild language, but nothing that is going to prevent me from watching the channel. And then he has absolutely hilarious videos about how, here we go, how dog breeds. Am I even, yeah, I'm showing my screen. How dog breeds react to robbers. That's hilarious. He's got several parts here. They're really funny. He's also got how dogs react to postmen. Here it is, dog breeds versus the mailman. You have got to watch this channel. His videos are about a minute long, or here you go, a minute and a half. And sometimes I just scroll through those, and I will watch those sometimes at night to give myself a break from all of the heaviness during the day. All right, let me queue up this next one. Let me know if that's a channel that you watch. And here's another one, super, super sweet. And this is Layla the Boxer. So I'm taking advice from the caring helper that assisted me through my grief. And she said, you've got to laugh more. You've got to have some lighthearted times in your life. The grief is going to be overwhelming for you. It actually doesn't help you to always be in this heavy grief. So here you go, Layla the Boxer. She's got these funny little videos. Here's one I will just play for you. You don't even need the sound. When dogs play hide and seek. She's got these cute little, oops, I think I just missed that one. Oh, here we are. Cute little dogs. Their expressions are just priceless. Let me know in a comment the kinds of funny videos or lighthearted videos that you like to watch. I also sometimes will just watch some home decor. It's completely has nothing to do with politics or current events whatsoever. And these little couple of minutes of breaks will get you laughing. It will be good for your immune system. It will be good for, look at these expressions. See, I'm laughing. That's what we need to do. Oh my gosh. They are just so adorable. There she is. And oh my gosh, this producer, she does such great videos. So here we go. All right, I'm going to wrap up here, friends. They smelled the cheese and there they come. All right, lots of fun. I can't wait to see what you are sharing here, everybody. Thank you so much for being on board. If you are new to this channel, take a moment. And actually, even if you're not new, would you please resubscribe? YouTube has a habit of hiding my videos, of unsubscribing the subscribers here, and that really helps me a lot. And then if you do want to keep up on current events, that is starting at 4 p.m. Pacific, that's 7 p.m. Eastern, and that is at the Healthy American. Love to see you there. I'm doing some nonstop investigative reporting, not only on what's going on Maui, but also all of the other things that the evil doers, DEW, spelling it that way, have up their sleeve. And again, the reason there is because I want you to understand that what you're seeing is valid. I want to validate and affirm so that you don't feel as though you're going crazy when the rest of the world doesn't see it. I also give some how-tos about preparing and feeling empowered because you're not letting the bad guys pull the wool over your eyes. Let me know in a comment how you cope in ways that don't require upping the ante with worse and worse and worse horrible things. Give it a break. Protect your pristine vessel. I like how Rhonda said it. Raise your vibrations higher and higher. Get the negativity out of your mind. There's a beautiful Bible verse. It is Philippians 4:7, I believe, 4, 6, and 7, that says, just put your mind on the positive things. Look at what is, I'm paraphrasing greatly, but it's basically focus on what is honorable, lovely, peaceful, and that is going to help you cope with your grief. Thank you, everybody. For those of you that are a financial supporter, either through a paid subscription on my Substack, a paid subscriber to peggyhall.tv, or you've just sent a gratitude gift to me, be sure that you join us on our final, it's going to be this Saturday, actually, our final Saturday of every month. We do our live Q&A webinar, and that's me and my husband, Pastor David, and it is private, so we can speak without any worry about the algorithm or anything. And we go for about an hour, hour and a half, sometimes longer. You can get your questions answered. We are focusing for the next several weeks on life after loss. We're going to be talking about additional ways to cope. We will pray for those that would love our support. And you can ask any question you want. If you have a question about, your freedom or your rights or any kind of laws or anything like that, we have a live Q&A feature. So if you're not sure whether or not you're on that list, maybe you sent a check or a donation and you never heard about this, please email my assistant. The email address is support@thehealthyamerican.org, and she will help you with links. That's 4 p.m. Pacific on Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern. It is recorded if you can't make it live, and you also have access to all of the previous videos. All right, friends.